Now, President Trump and the Republicans said that they were going to draw a contrast with the Democrats' picture of America. And on the first night of the Republican National Convention, the president certainly did that. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, I don't know if you got a chance to see it, but it really doesn't matter because you've already seen it. That is the surprise visit by President Trump on opening night of the Republican National Convention. Normally, they bring in the nominee on the final night or the fourth night of the convention, where they receive the accolades and the acclaim of the delegates and formally accept the nomination of the party. Instead, President Trump showed up on the opening night and began what can only be described as a loosely organized collection of remarks with no apparent teleprompter, no apparent direction, and lots of broken thoughts picked up in mid-sentence. It was such a stark contrast with the speech that I saw from former Vice President Joe Biden to accept his nomination, which was a really buttoned down, crisply delivered, clearly well-practiced presentation, clearly read off of teleprompter. And all I could think, Bill, was that President Trump knows how to hold an audience.
I didn't actually see it. I'm sorry to say, not yet. I'll see it.
Yeah, but you've seen every time he ever appears before the camera in unprepared remarks.
It sounds like
he talked for an hour.
It sounds like a graduating high school class was having a Zoom graduation, and then George Clooney just happens to call in to congratulate everybody. I don't know. Was it a virtual thing with?
No, he was before somewhat of a live audience. He was in North Carolina, so he was actually before a live gathering.
Oh, okay. Well, again, apologies for not having seen that earlier. It's, needless to say, Donald Trump is unique. He does what he wants to do, and he does what he wants to do for reasons that sometimes are clear only to him. I do think, however, that however disjointed it might have been, I suspect what he was trying to do is to do something to offset the unbelievably rehearsed isn't the word, almost robotic speeches that marked the Democratic National Convention, of course, culminating with Joe Biden's, as we all knew. A miracle of luck for Joe Biden that was able to be pre-taped. You just, not only do you not know how many takes they took, they very likely edited together and cut out the bit about the time he went to the moon with corn pop. But I suspect that what Donald Trump was trying to do was trying to inject a sense of liveliness and some sense of excitement, frankly, because these conventions, the Democratic convention anyway, was just a non-event as far as I'm concerned. It really was a Zoom call. We talked about this before. It was just a non-event. And I got to tell you, Scotty, I've been thinking about this. I'm not sure that has ever happened in this country's history. I don't think we have ever, in the history of this country, had well, I'm fairly sure that the founding fathers didn't have any Zoom conventions, and I don't think we had any mail-in conventions either. I think it's the first time in our nation's history, and the nation's more than 100 years old, as you well know, that a political convention was not the kind of circus, and in this particular case, I mean circus in a pretty good way. A rally is a better word. Excitement, the cigar-filled, the smoke in the back rooms, and the dealing and the wheeling and the funny hats and the great state of Tennessee, and all of that. It really felt. Well, it felt like 2020 is what it felt like. It felt barren, bleak, and I couldn't wait for it to be over.
Well, and there was a sense, because, I'm always looking for what's the best possible interpretation of what people do, only because I think most people, even the people you consider or one considers to be ignorant or evil or malevolent, even those people think they're doing the right thing and are trying to do the best they can. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm watching the president talk and I'm thinking, this is not just that he was not presidential. It was like he was intentionally going out of his way at a high point in most people's presidencies, being nominated to get a second term in office, and he was going out of his way to avoid looking professional or dignified or even wise and certainly humble. Like, this is his thing. He just wants to make sure that there's not the taint of dignity upon his presidency.
Well, that's a pretty harsh way of putting it.
Wait till you watch the video.
Oh, okay. But was that his actual acceptance video?
No. No,
Okay,
it was. In fact, it was a surprise appearance that apparently most people weren't expecting, and it lasted more than an hour.
Okay, well, but see, that's kind of the point, though, isn't it? I mean, if you were to if this had been his acceptance speech, it certainly would the unscripted ad hoc nature of it would certainly be more shocking at the very least if that was his official acceptance speech. I suspect, and I actually, I'd be quite amazed if this weren't actually the case. I suspect this was kind of a last-minute decision on the part of Donald Trump, and I mean like maybe within the half an hour before the thing started or something. This year is so strange, Scott. It's so weird, and I think again that if it were me, and I had the kind of political instincts and especially showmanship instincts that Donald Trump has, which is why he's president, I would look at what happened with the DNC, and I would say to myself, my God, I am going to do everything in my power to distance myself from this rote, boring, droning, monotonous, prefabricated, absolute, you know, you know what it was like? The DNC convention was like a PowerPoint presentation. That's what it felt like to me, I think. And I think he just said, hey, to hell with it. We're gonna pump as much electricity as we can into this thing in this miserable year. And I think that was the result. Now when he makes his formal acceptance speech, then we can talk about dignity and all the rest of it. I think the idea that he's just another guy here, and again, that would be different if that was the formal acceptance speech, but it wasn't.
Well, and perhaps the most interesting part of it all is that the people who are watching this video, who love Donald Trump, are going to hate me for even saying this, for even raising the possibility. Like if Barack Obama had gotten up and given a presentation like this, people would have said, he's losing his marbles. But when President Trump does it, they not only do they love him for doing it, but they despise anyone who says, well, gee, maybe a president of the United States ought to give a little forethought to what he says before he stands up in front of the bunch of delegates at the convention.
You know, you go to war with the army you have. Barack Obama would not do that because I don't think Barack Obama, I've never seen Barack Obama speak for any length of time off the teleprompter and have him make the slightest particle of sense. So if that's what you got from this with Donald Trump, then, you know, this guy is, as I said before, I said it in 2016, right after the election, they did the poll of likely voters and they had Hillary Clinton winning in a landslide, but Trump won because he drew in unlikely voters. He drew in people who'd never been involved in politics before. And his appeal to those people is what made him president. There are, as you mentioned, and I am certainly a fan. I'm not free of criticizing the guy, but I do understand that he comes with what he comes with, and that's why he's president. In 2012, after Romney lost, I said the next president's coming from the pop culture, and the reason I was so convinced of that was because politics had become so much of a reality TV show that unless you understood the dynamics of that, you simply didn't have a chance anymore. It's not a question of Nixon versus Kennedy in the television debates and one of them not wearing makeup and having 5 o'clock shadow. It's nothing like that anymore. Politics today is a scripted television show, and only people that understand that understand how to win an election in the 21st century. Now, you may say, and your reply may be, yes, but this was completely unscripted. Okay, but that may be what the script called for. Does that
I would
make
like
any
to
sense?
read that script. That would, in fact, you know what it read like?
No, what I'm saying.
If you read the script, it sounded like the script of a play or a TV show or something like that, because real people, as scriptwriters try to craft their dialogue, don't sound like people who are giving prepared speeches. So yeah, maybe it was all scripted.
My point. No. I think you misunderstood me.
Probably.
The script, the election, the campaign script may have called in Donald Trump's mind for a completely unscripted moment. And I certainly don't think he did it by accident. And whether or not it hurt him or helped him, I don't know. But I do know that aspect of Donald Trump, that sense that he is not a member of the political establishment, that everything he does is different because he's different, is the heart and soul of his core appeal. And when you get to things like conventions, that's who you're pitching to. So I'd like to see what the acceptance speech looks like. I suspect it'll be.
Well, Bill, let me challenge that, though,
different.
because typically
Sure.
what they say is that's not who you're pitching to at the convention. You've already got all those people. You've got the nomination. Well, who you're pitching to at the convention, you got an opportunity to have some uninterrupted television time, is you're trying to reach the middle. You're trying to find the people who are not already supporting you, who don't like the guy on the other side, or it's a toss-up, and you're trying to woo those people. But at least as far as I could tell, there was nothing in President Trump's way of approaching this that indicated that he was interested in reaching out beyond the room.
Well, let's find out what his nomination speech sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay, but what I'm saying here, and I've said it 3 times, that I just don't want to keep repeating myself. It's just exceedingly unusual, and so that's why I think he did it. When you are, it's always a tremendous advantage to go second. It's like in football, right? When you do the coin toss, you win the toss and you have the choice. What you want the second half. You want to have the freedom to know what's already happened in the first half of the game. And in this particular case, the first half was the Democratic National Convention. It's a big advantage to go second. Big advantage, because you get to not only rebut what they've said or what the entire basic feel of the opposing party is. You can focus right in on what they just said. You can use direct quotes and so on. And again, the reason I think that this was such an unusual event, and the reason that it may have at least justified it, is this DNC was unlike anything I have ever seen, and it was deadly monotonous and dull and scripted. That's the word. It was so assembly line scripted that, with the exception of Something's Happening Here, which was like being struck by lightning
Stephen
40
Stills
or 50
and Billy
times,
Porter, yeah,
which we did a show on, Right Angle on last week. With the exception of that, it feels like a PowerPoint presentation. So I suspect that Donald Trump, either at the last minute, or it sounds like a last minute thing, decided he's going to drop in on the crowd and get the crowd fired up.
Final question in this, because I want to really, this to me is what struck me about it after listening to the speech. I thought, how do we follow this? Like, will the United States ever go back to having presidents who do what presidents have always done? Is this just, is Donald Trump's appearance here kind of an aberration, a blip that will then vanish, and nobody will look back and they'll just go, oh yeah, here's another guy like a George Bush kind of character, like a Bill Clinton guy who gets up and gives a speech. Is it possible to dial this back and return to politics as usual?
However scandalized you may be by Donald Trump's opening remarks, and however scattered they may have been, as I said, I didn't see it. If you want to talk about political scandal, if you want to talk about returning the presidency to its office of dignity and decorum, you're going to have to, at the very least, include the fact that the nominee for the presidency of the United States of America on the part of the Democratic Party is not able to complete sentences. If you're talking about a return to normalcy, then at the very least you have to concede that in this wild card of a year with this wild card of a candidate, decorum, you would imagine, respect for the office, you would imagine, would include the nomination of a person whose mind has not just plain gone. And so this is the world we find ourselves in. And this is where I come back to all the time. This is a discussion we've had for 4 years now. Can I imagine a more statesman-like president? I absolutely can. A more disciplined president? Absolutely, yes, I can. I cannot imagine one who would have gotten elected in 2016, but I can imagine one. And so here we are. But if you want to talk about the damage to the institution of the presidency and a return to normalcy, you're going to have to go a long way to convince me that one ad lib appearance at a convention somehow outweighs the fact that the opposing political party has just the rank cynicism to use this COVID epidemic to drag a man across the finish line who really, really has just spectacularly lost his mind. And there's been a very effective video out there that compares Joe Biden in like 2016, not like Joe Biden from 1986, Joe Biden in 2016 versus Joe Biden today. It's not just a question of Alzheimer's. It looks like the guy's had a stroke of some kind. And so what do you want me to say about this year? It's the first year in the history of the country where we haven't had live political conventions. It's the first year in the history of country where a man who is absolutely, and I think anybody who has actually looked at Joe Biden speaking would have. I'm convinced I could win this case in a court of law, which I may end up having to do based on what I'm saying here. But I think it can be reasonably proven beyond any reasonable doubt that the Democratic candidate for the presidency did not become incapacitated while in office. He was incapacitated before he was elected. He was incapacitated before he was nominated. And so this is the COVID election. This is the year where every single thing in American life has been completely inverted. And I drive to and from parts of Los Angeles, and I look around at the tent cities, and I look around at the filth, and I try to get across an intersection, but I can't because the street is filled with people in black masks and smashing things, and that just happened to me just a couple days ago here, and I say to myself, when did this American city that I live in become Mogadishu? What is happening here? And I don't know the answer to that. But if I were to list the things of the things that have happened in this year in 2020, political and otherwise, I don't think I would have put Donald Trump's opening night speech in the top 10.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're grateful you took the time to watch this episode of Bill Whittle Now. As regulars know, the format of this show involves me ambushing Bill with provocative questions and giving him an opportunity to do what you have to do daily in the marketplace, which is to be able to respond, falling back on nothing but your foundational principles. And we have found over time that foundational principles prove adequate to the task. We're grateful
Speaking
to
of
the
foundational
people.
principles,
Yes.
Just because of the nature of this show, it's been said 100 times, and I'm going to say it 101 times. I'm going to say it 101 times. Scott Ott at our previous network did a series called Freedom's Charter about the Constitution, about what went into the making of the Constitution and so on. He is as much of an American patriot as anybody I've ever met. His job is to be the kind of person you want to throw a brick at the television set at, and some of you have done that. But it is not fair to look at this show and say, well, Bill's the good guy and Scott's the bad guy, because the nature of this show is that I look like the bad guy, the good guy, because of the bad guy. This is the entire format here. And as Scott has pointed out, the reason we wanted to do this show was we have seen so many political programs where somebody simply says what they say, and they issue the standard, party statement, and it never gets challenged. Meanwhile, in the real world, you've got somebody at the water cooler who is challenging every single thing that the president said. And we thought from the beginning that the idea of being able to defend any of these positions in depth, was important. I throw that in because Scott catches an awful lot more lightning than he deserves, and I couldn't be prouder of him.
Perhaps we should consider also, as a sideline, selling new computer monitors to people whose monitors got broken with bricks. Just a thought.
Just like an acrylic thing with the Bill Whittle Now logo in the upper left-hand corner,
That's
just like
right.
this one. Little acrylic thing you can just punch as hard as you want to, or bulletproof probably would be the way to go.
Anyway, the people who really make the show happen is not Bill or myself. It's the people who support the enterprise, the
Absolutely.
members at BillWhittle.com. They manufacture their own content hub over at BillWhittle.com as well, which you can avail yourself of when you become a member. There's a big green button on the page that says Become a Member. Go ahead and click that button over there and see what you're missing, not just the content that the members produce, but additional backstage episodes of our Right Angle program. You're going to be glad you did. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.